This is it. This is the car that began America's love affair with a sports car. 1946 MGTC. GIs returning from overseas had discovered the joys of a lightweight minimalist sports car, and they brought them home with them by the dozens, maybe the hundreds, to the point where MG realized that there was a great untapped market here in the United States. This beautiful little car was restored by Safety Fast Restorations, one of the nation's leading MG specialists. It's got about 14,000 miles on the restoration, and it has been used and enjoyed properly, and I believe it was Safety Fast Restoration's owner, his personal car. So that speaks very highly of the work that was done and the way that it works. Let's take a drive. Inside, the MG is kind of a curious mix of old world craftsmanship and minimalism. Beautifully detailed, awesome stuff like the wood on the dashboard, which is actually a real piece of maple. These lovely Jaeger gauges, and this particular car has this cool double windshield setup, the original flat windshield, and then these two little miniature windshields that are just too cool. Flat, lay flat, the original one, these look really cool. Controls, you'll see, are not too difficult. Even being on the right side of the car, you'll master it pretty quickly. You turn the key on and just pull the starter, and it fires right up. Speedometer is over on the passenger side, tachometer is in front of me on the driver's side. We've got about 55, 60 pounds of oil pressure. The ammeter is making good electricity. So let's take a drive. On the MG, the steering wheel is right here in your lap. So there's an adjustment to be made for driving position. Although there's plenty of leg room, plenty of room inside, it's not uncomfortable in the least. Shift pattern is a standard 4-speed. And like I said, you'll master it without any difficulty at all. About 20 minutes of driving and you'll be like you've been doing it all your life. A little 1,250cc 4-cylinder engine makes 54 horsepower, I believe, but it's plenty torquey. And the car only weighs, I don't know, 1,800 pounds. I probably, by myself, have added 10% to its curb weight. And I think that's really what was the game changer. America never really built mass-produced, lightweight sports cars before. And there's really something to be said for driving a car that is elemental like this. There's a very direct connection to the hardware. You can feel every little irregularity in the road through the steering wheel. Brakes are powerful. There are aluminum drums on this particular car. And they work really well. Momentum is your friend with only 54 horsepower on tap. But once you've got it rolling, it likes to zip along. We're going here about 55 miles an hour, and the car seems real happy at that speed. There's something to be said for the old adage that it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow. And the MGTC demonstrates that superbly. Very easy to understand how guys would fall in love and want to bring these home from overseas when they came back from the war. It really is a completely different driving experience. It's not about isolation. I can feel the front tires telegraphing to me through the steering. I can feel the engine working away. The transmission makes neat mechanical noises. And there's a great baritone exhaust note that belies the size of that engine. It's really cool. I also think the TC is arguably the prettiest small car ever made. The styling disguises its size until there's a person in it. You can see for comparison how diminutive it really is. But those swoopy fenders, the cut down doors, and the hood that's roughly a third the length of the car really make it a great looking machine from any angle. And I'd argue that this is one of those rare convertibles that looks just as good with the top up as it does with the top down. Tom Metcalf, who is the owner of Safety Fast Engineering and Restoration, I believe this was his personal car. And if you're familiar with their work, you know that they are the go-to people for the T-Series MGs. This car has a few modifications, including aluminum brakes, and you can hear them squeaking a little bit. And that's simply because just driving around like this never really gets them hot enough to work at peak efficiency. Squeaky brakes, especially in a performance car, are typically good brakes. So you may hear them squeaking a little bit, but make no mistake, they are effective. You can also see another layer of louvers on the top of the hood to help with cooling. And this little car runs ice cold no matter what the situation. It's about 75 degrees today, and I would have no qualms about driving this one, high speeds, traffic, whatever. I don't think this little guy's going to complain about any of the conditions you're going to meet. It does sit on tall, skinny 19-inch wheels, and the tires are about the size of those used on a Model A Ford. So ride quality is primitive at best, and it's certainly not going to be fantastic at road holding. But again, driving this thing at 9/10 is exciting. You can really toss this little car around. The handling is very benign. So while the absolute numbers aren't astounding like we're used to today, using this car at 9/10 is absolutely a joy. It's just a party to drive, and you're not endangering the countryside. Imagine driving, say, a late model Porsche 911 at 9/10 on this little quiet country road. That would be insanity. So this makes for a very usable little package that is always delightful to drive. Again, we're buzzing along here at about 50. It's totally happy doing this. I see no evidence of any cut corners or haphazard workmanship. The alignment is good, it tracks straight. I don't even have to hold onto the wheel on a straight section of pavement. And for a largely hand-built car that's got a lot of wood in its structure, this thing has no squeaks and rattles at all. It's really cool to feel how well built and solid this little guy feels. And again, you can hear the brakes a little bit. Those aluminum drums are really good at shedding heat. And I think that's a nice upgrade. They look good, polished the way they are behind the painted spoke wheels, but they're very effective. And again, for something that you're going to want to drive and use, I don't mind the upgrade, and the trade-off is pretty nice. I'll put up with a little squeakiness in exchange for having really good brakes for a car from the 40s. In fact, probably best to think of this little car as a relic of the 30s. It was not significantly changed for post-war production. It's still got a primitive ladder frame, simple suspension with a live axle in back, leaf springs, all of that. And it's a great demonstration of why less mass is good. You don't need a lot of engine, you don't need a lot of suspension, you don't need a lot of brakes, you don't need a lot of tire, and it's very capable. The gearbox is synchromesh on second, third, and fourth. And once it's warmed up, it just clicks right through the gears. That's really the most fun part of this, I think, is listening to that exhaust note and feeling the precision of that gearbox. It's very direct. It just clunks into gear. You feel it, you know you've got it. It never leads you astray. It just slots right in there. That's awesome. I'm going to stay quiet as we accelerate. You can hear the gear whine and the engine and the exhaust note. All of that's a big part of the MG experience. It makes great sounds. Should also point out that everything works on this car. Lights, gauges, it has a fog light up front, has turn signals. Just nice soundtrack. There's no need to really wind it out to get maximum performance. This little 4-cylinder engine has dual carburetors, so it breathes pretty well, but it's just a 2-valve per cylinder overhead valve setup. The view over the hood is awesome, seeing those chrome headlights out there, and it really is a long hood. And that's probably as long as the hood on my 1929 Cadillac, so it really is an impressive view. I love seeing the fenders. And with the corners of the car just right out there where you can see them, I can place that tire exactly where I want it. Quite a bit of wind in here at about 45 miles an hour, but that's part of the experience as well. And as with the, say, the 32 Hot Rod I drove a few weeks ago, I think a set of wind wings would really make a difference in terms of comfort on this car. But on the other hand, maybe a set of goggles. That would be a lot of fun too. Ride quality is not luxury car smooth by any means, but it's well controlled. It's a little springy, but it's well damped. Bumps are not obnoxious. It bounces over them, but it doesn't crash, if you know what I mean. All 1946 TCs were black. Red was added in September, and that would make this car a color change. This car was built in July, so it predates the availability of red, but I can't argue with the look. Red with the biscuit hides inside is just a fantastic sports car combination that's still popular today. And I like to hope, at least, that the MG guys aren't quite as persnickety as some of the other guys about absolute authenticity in their cars. The workmanship is certainly excellent. It's beautifully finished, even though the restoration is about 15 years old. And it pulls with real gusto. Rolling along here at about 60. And it feels like it would do this all day. It'll do it as long as you can stand it, that's for sure. like I said, I admit that my exposure to right-hand drive British cars is modest. But this little guy is very easy to get used to, very easy to acclimate. Doesn't require any special talents or anything. I would recommend you wear some little shoes because the pedal area down there is minor and our American big feet are not ideal. I have a special set of shoes that I usually wear for this and I should have put them on. But the driving position is not bad. Once you're in here, there's plenty of leg room. You're sitting kind of down low. I bet I could touch the pavement. And if you're running with a lot of traffic and big trucks, you're going to feel intimidated. But around town like this, and particularly on a quiet country road, it's just awesome. You really feel connected to the car. By about 3,500 RPM, the engine's pretty much all done. So there's really no need to rev the heck out of it. For a little engine, it's plenty torquey. Fourth gear works real well for 80% of your circumstances. And there's a nice compromise between usability around town and then open road cruising. Quite honestly, I feel like I would have to abuse the car to find the limits of the brakes and get them warmed up sufficiently. Pedal feel is very firm. There's plenty of stopping power on tap. I have no worries about this car's ability to stop. It stops true, it stops straight, it's not pulling. But again, momentum is your friend in this little car. Doesn't weigh much, but keeping it rolling, smoothness, consistency, you'll develop a feel for it and discover that you really do have to polish your driving skills to get the most out of it. Powerful cars mask a lot of driver mistakes. This one, not so much. You better be at the top of your game. And this car will dance with you. It'll tolerate it if you're ham-fisted, so don't sweat it too much. But the better you get, the more the car will reward you. There's always more in the car than a driver can get out of it. And while I used to have a competition license, this little car, I think, would just be too much fun to drive on the track as well. I would really find out where the limits are. The squeaky brakes are a little annoying, but it means that they're going to be effective. Clutch take-up is nice. God, and I just love the way that shifter sticks through the gears. This little guy seems to make a lot of friends on the road too. Everybody waving and smiling when they see this cute little car. Very easy to understand how Americans fell in love with something totally different and brought it back with them. Where would we be today if not for this little car? Would the Corvette have happened? Would we have had the Mazda Miata? What about the Nissan 240ZX in 1970? all of those cars were elemental sports cars, front engine, rear drive, modest power, but sporting. And I think this car is the genesis in America. You know, the Europeans discovered this years ago and had fun with it. But for Americans, this was really a big change. In fact, there's a TR6, which is the probably end of the line for great British sports cars. Thanks for taking a ride with us in this 1946 MGTC. We will see you next time.